Everyone, thank you so much for being here, for joining us for another series from the Smith.ai webinar program, our master's program. Today, we're talking about cybersecurity and password protection for small businesses with 1Password. So Alex Hoffmann is joining us today. He is the Sales Engineer and Product Evangelist. I am Maddy Martin. I am the VP of Marketing at Smith.ai. And if you're not familiar with Smith.ai, we are a 24/7 virtual receptionist and web chat solution for small businesses, answering calls, chats, texts, Facebook messages, both inbound and outbound, helping you deliver really superior customer engagement. So today's topic, though, is absolutely related to, just as we do, supporting the small business, protecting the small business and making sure that we are ahead of those potential risks and pitfalls for our company, for our employees, for any contractors, et cetera, because this is really a constantly shifting area that we have to keep on top of to protect our companies best. So it's, to have a little bit of an intro before Alex goes into his deep dive, we'll talk about the state of affairs in cybersecurity, reducing friction with a password manager and why that password manager can be really important in ways that you might not expect. And then the benefits of creating a culture of security. So it's not just about imposing a top-down approach, but making sure that there's buy-in at every level so that you've got the eyes and ears out there and people have a heightened sense of awareness. We'll also leave time for Q&A, so make sure that you submit your questions throughout so we can keep an eye on that and make sure there's proper time to allow for any answers there. But without further ado, Alex, welcome. If you could just give a brief introduction to who you are and your background, then we can get started.
So yeah, hi everybody. I'm Alex Hoffmann. I'm one of the sales engineers that is part of the sales enablement team here at 1Password, where I mostly work with business customers. And I'm being called on when one of our sales executives or account managers has specific technical questions that a customer brings up that they want help with answering. And this is when I come in. So I've been with the company for a good bit over 8 years now. So it's been a while. And I've been in a customer-facing role for almost 6 of those. So yeah, that's all for me. And if there are no objections, let's go over the agenda again briefly. Again, like Maddy said, we're going to take a look at the state of affairs as it comes to cybersecurity, go over why it makes sense to create a culture of security in your organization, then discuss how to reduce friction with a password manager and end up with a Q&A. So first up, let's talk briefly about the current state of cybersecurity. To do that, I want to introduce you to 2 terms that you'll likely have already encountered in the media and maybe even on a fairly regular basis. First up is the incident. This is a general term just describing an event that affects the information in your organization, information that you use, or information that you store. This kind of event puts that specific data at risk. That can be in various ways. For example, by exposing it in a way that is undesirable, or in a way that results in the information that you need to do your jobs, to perform your function, suddenly becoming unavailable. The other thing, and that's the worst part, is a breach. A breach is a severe security incident during which data that should be confidential, for example, because you are tasked with keeping it safe as part of the service you offer, is exfiltrated from systems and then made available to people who have really no authorization to see it. Now, these are 2 typical terms, and security incidents and breaches have been on the rise. Between 2020 and 2021, publicized cases have risen by 17% across all industries, across all company sizes. And I mean, this number looks big, and it is big, because for your average large-scale data breach, you're looking at an average cost of $3.8 million. That is huge. Obviously, smaller businesses will not look at these kinds of scales, but the more concerning kinds of facts here on the slide are that the absolute majority of breaches and security incidents happen because some sort of human error occurred. And in over 60% of the cases, some kind of access credentials are involved. Now, again, that big dollar amount applies to large organizations, financial institutions, big web services, etc. But the statistics about the causes of security incidents are largely the same, no matter the size of the organization. So why do these things happen in the first place? The root causes are as simple as they are human. You start with a higher demand for effective tools to do our jobs. And that often creates reduced visibility into what is used by whom, and what data ends up in which tools. Combine that with the general stresses of work. And honestly, over the past couple of years, the additional stresses imposed on us by the pandemic and the changing landscape of work, that then results in an environment in which mistakes can happen more easily. Now, that all sounds dire and gloomy, I get it. What can you do about this? So the first thing you can do is, at the same time, a big undertaking at face value, and also quite simple. It's creating a culture of security in your organization. Now, what do I mean by that? In an organization that has established a culture of security, mindful habits related to handling of data, handling of sensitive information, credentials, become part of everybody's routine. And from a top-down perspective, you see that team members are not understood as potential security liabilities because they understand the need for certain practices. In turn, security for the entire organization, for every team member, feels like a manageable responsibility and not something that is simply imposed by a boss or an IT department. And there are steps you can take to establish this culture of security in your organization. And honestly, some of them are likely much more straightforward than you might think. First up, understand what you need and learn about what your team needs. Then, in general, and this goes back to what I just said, take a human-centric approach to security. Don't see people as liabilities. See them as points where you can improve your overall security habits in your organization, and make sure that all of you are more productive while being secure. And this goes into educating and empowering your team members. And there are a bunch of things that you can do that are fairly basic pieces that form a much larger whole when it comes to training your team members. So, for example, craft thoughtful guidelines for safe online habits. There are lots and lots of resources for this online, and you can start with small steps and build on those. Now, once you have those guidelines, build them into policies that you then integrate into onboarding processes for new team members, and also reinforce these policies and guidelines with regular training that allows people to ask questions and come to you with concerns. It's important to make sure that your team members know what security risks to look for, what security risks they may encounter in their specific positions, in their specific tasks, and any kind of red flags. I mean, we all know the basic things like phishing emails and so on, but it doesn't have to stop there. When you do try to set up guidelines and when you do training, use questions that you receive from team members, even the ones that appear simplistic, as opportunities to reevaluate your policies and your approach to training your teams. Next, and this may be an option for some of you, assigning or hiring a dedicated security person that facilitates any training that may be needed. This can be someone who's enthusiastic about these topics, that you give additional leeway and additional responsibilities to keep an eye on this and to help people, somebody who may be technically adept or really just interested in these topics, and you let them do what they do best and help your team. Next up would be something like facilitating a direct line of communication between your team members and people in your organization who have to keep an eye on security. Maybe you have an IT person that you can rely on. And you should have that line of communication established between your team and those security experts to report suspicious activity or any kind of snafu they may encounter, or even mistakes they've made. And this should all be done in an atmosphere of open communication around topics surrounding security. Mistakes happen. When they happen, you react to them and you help people not make the same mistakes again. What you'll be able to see quickly is your team develop an awareness to the threats and risks that they face in their day-to-day work. Understand the tools they work with and how to use them securely, and what to do if something seems fishy. With a bit of work and time, this will then transform. It will transform how your organization works, because once people understand and see the value of doing things securely, it's going to become ingrained in your organization and really a part of the way you operate. Because in the end, doing things securely in the first place saves you time, money, and headaches. Now comes the pitch. So there are many places to start at when trying to establish a culture of security, when becoming better at these things. And one of the best ways, and I'll freely admit that I'm totally biased and guided by experience here, is adding a password manager to your organization's toolset. Password managers are frankly one of the most effective ways to reduce friction in your team's everyday security tasks. And you need to also recognize that security is a task. For most of us, I mean, obviously, the company that I work in, that's an exception. But for most people, security is a secondary or even tertiary task. You have to go through security steps like signing into your machine, signing into certain services and applications in order to perform your jobs. And this can be a hassle. And reducing that hassle, reducing that friction, reducing the time it takes from the moment a person signs into or opens their machine, boots up their computer, to the point where they can start working, going through all of those security tasks, is just going to help you with everything you do. But how do password managers do that? Well, here are a couple of the really, on the slide, there are a couple of the really basic features that pretty much every password manager offers. They let people store passwords in a secure database that is protected with a, hopefully, strong main password. And this eliminates the need to write down passwords or remember an increasing amount of them. Secondly, password managers can generate strong random passwords in a snap. We humans are terrible at this. We think we have a strong password in our head, but really, most of the time it's easy to guess by a machine or even another person. So password managers will generate properly random passwords at the click of a button. And they even often aid users in replacing old weak passwords on websites. And that just helps every team member in your organization. The next big feature group is logging into websites. With a password manager, this becomes an easy task with the help of browser extensions and various integrations into applications. And I really cannot overestimate how effective this can be, will help people from being easily victimized in phishing attacks. Combine the features of a password manager and training people to use it to sign into websites with a bit of good training, and you have really, really a winning combination for this that will reduce the risk of phishing attacks massively. And the last big point is really ease of sharing. With a password manager, gone will be the need for Excel spreadsheets on a shared drive that you have, or paper. Password managers allow you to give access to information where it is needed and to who it is needed. And you'll understand who is using what. This is one of the really basic principles when it comes to security in general, but password security in particular. It's called the principle of least privilege, where you want to make sure that people have access to the stuff they need and nothing that they don't even need to see. This reduces your risk of falling prey or reduces the extent of a potential security incident massively. Now, these are 4 main points, but the fun doesn't end here. Other benefits that many password managers have is the ability to be notified about data breaches. So they can typically scan certain databases and people can figure out, oh, this password that I had ages ago showed up there, or this password, that my email address has been caught in this or that breach. I can tell you, I mean, I've been using the internet for a long time. I think the last big breach that I've been in was the Instagram, Facebook one, where a lot of my personal data just got leaked onto the internet. And since then, spam has become quite bad. And yeah, I mean, those are the things that we have to deal with, right? Now, the next cool thing that I want to point out that exists in most password managers is the ability to carry your sensitive data with you on every device. It's going to be available to you no matter where you need it. And the last big one that I want to mention here is that most of these tools offer a way for you and your team not just to secure your work-life information, but also your personal data and your family's data by offering free complimentary plans for private life use. Now, why 1Password? I mean, like I said before, I'm biased. I've been using 1Password for well over 14 years, and I've worked for the company for over 8. We have a couple of big selling points. One of them is we're private by design. What I mean by that is our entire system is designed around knowing the least possible amount about you. So our system is built in a way that we collect the absolute minimum of data about you, and at the same time have a system where we can never ever be in a position to see what you're storing in 1Password. And we ensure this by encryption, frankly. 1Password comes from the consumer space, And for the longest time, the company has existed, and the company has existed for 16 years, 17 years, yeah, quite a while. We've been making consumer apps. First, we started on the Mac, then we went out and branched out into Windows, iOS, and so on. But what hasn't changed, even though we've kind of branched out into offering our services to business customers 6 years ago, what hasn't changed is that every decision we make in terms of design and features has the clear goal of making a person's day-to-day life easier, making it easier to handle passwords, making it easier to handle any kind of sensitive data you may wish to store in 1Password. And our applications have really an unparalleled user experience. And all of this is backed by an industry-leading security design that, I mentioned this before, is based on encryption. And in 1Password, it's based only on encryption. And the encryption happens with keys that only you ever know. They're never transferred anywhere. We don't have a copy. We don't know it. Meaning, and this is another thing, breaches in 1Password are extremely unlikely, because even if somebody gets into our infrastructure, it doesn't help them one bit. And lastly, and this is something that I'm also quite proud of, and I mean, with a company like Smith.ai, you're used to a certain degree of service, and the same thing applies to 1Password. We have a really, really great in-house support team, and we pride ourselves in delivering a sensible and human approach to supporting you, to working with you, to helping you train your people. And with that, I think we can move into QA.
Awesome. All right. Well, Alex, thank you so much for that presentation. And there have been a lot of questions that have come in. So let's just get right into it. I think we've got a lot of people who are asking one question, which is LastPass versus 1Password. Let's come right out and say it. Can you talk through some of the benefits that 1Password provides, and anything that you know about maybe user experiences once they've joined 1Password, and maybe features that they didn't know they wanted or they needed? Just some points of comparison.
That's a common one, and it's, on the one hand, a simple question to answer, and on the other hand, it's a hard one. Now, LastPass has a very different approach to building their product. What they're doing, in my opinion, is quite good. But what I appreciate more about 1Password is our unrelenting and uncompromising focus on security. We've built everything in 1Password in a way that even if something bad happens to us, even if a breach occurs, anything like this, the data of our customers stays secure. We can never have access, we cannot lose access, we cannot grant anybody else access into data, because only each individual person has the encryption keys necessary to decrypt the data that they store in 1Password. And the other big thing, and it's something that we just hear a lot when people switch from other password managers, not necessarily exclusively LastPass, but others as well, is how our user interface, our applications, and you have applications for all operating systems. So no matter if you're using Windows or Mac OS or Linux, iOS, Android, Chrome OS, whatever you like, there's a 1Password application for that. So you always have your data with you. And what people tell us about our application is that they seem to be designed for humans. They seem to be designed to be there when you need them and get out of your way when you don't. And lastly, I'll harp on about this as many times as people want to, our team. No matter if you're talking to somebody in the sales process, or if you're talking to somebody during onboarding, or if you have a question, if you have a problem with 1Password, if something doesn't work as you expect it to, and you get in touch with our support team, you'll always have somebody empathetic who is trained in-house, and who will always be willing to do anything they can to get you up and running.
Alex, I think that's a really huge point. I just want to sit on that for a second, because, you know, if you're a Smith.ai client and you're here, or you're not familiar with us, that's something that we say really often too, where it's actually one of the things that I recommend in my own webinars, you know, advising small businesses on operations, communications, et cetera. We talk about choosing the right software and solutions and services. You know, you can look at a lot of websites and not get the full sense of what is the client experience. And when we think about our pain points with solutions that we all use day in and day out, you know, we've all used various Google products, probably. That's one example. You know, what is the level of support? When we talk about VoIP phone systems, this is one of my favorite examples. You know, why do we recommend paying for it instead of using a free Google Voice, for example? Well, one reason is because we want to talk to a live person instead of post a comment in a forum, right? So think about like what that experience is going to be for you if you not only have, you know, this solution that's really important to your business fundamentals and protection and growth, knowing that you have a strong foundation to build on. You also want to know that as your company grows, the burden of ownership over the cybersecurity is not just on your shoulders to be some expert, but that you can lean in on experts and protect your time, which I often talk about, delegating that. You know, delegation is not just to a staff person, but also to the right solution providers who can be sort of an accessory to your team.
Yep, definitely.
So a few other questions have come through. One is about iCloud Password Manager. Are you able to import from that and other password managers? Like maybe how would a migration happen? How would you transition?
Yeah, that's definitely possible. So iCloud passwords or the keychain on macOS can be imported into 1Password, and we support various kinds of imports from different types of password managers. I mean, the big ones are obviously there, like LastPass, Dashlane. We have a recently added an improved version of our KeyPass importer. It's all there. You go to our site, you log into your account, and you have an import option there that lets you customize the import and make sure you get data into your account with the highest possible fidelity. And this is a pain for many people. In the industry, password managers are called sticky products, because once you are using one specific tool, it's oftentimes hard to move to a different one. One of the reasons in many cases is that it's kind of hard getting that data out of certain systems in a way that is usable in a different one. And this is something that is getting better. There are a couple of great examples in the industry now. And we have been at the forefront of this for years and years. We provide multiple export formats, and a number of them are highly detailed, super high fidelity, so that if you export your data from 1Password, if you decide, you know what, I found this other tool, it works a lot better for me, you can take your data with you in an easy way and get it into that new tool in the best possible conditions, so you can just continue working. Because we honestly believe that your data is yours, and we will never ever try to lock you into our platform with stuff you save in 1Password.
That's just another part of a good client experience, I think. So you know, having that holistic view of, you know, whether you are a short-term or a long-term client, or your situation has changed, it should be easy to work with a company, whether you're coming in or going out. It's just part of the reality. I really appreciate that answer, Alex. Next question is about encrypted email. So do you recommend, you know, maybe your personal recommendation, or if the company has a stance on this, do you recommend using encrypted email like Proton Mail?
That's a tough one. It's going to be hard for me to have a recommendation from a company side, frankly. My personal opinion is, sure, if you want to deal with this, do it. My personal opinion and my problem with most encrypted email services is it's not often that your counterpart actually uses it. If you have a relationship established where secure email is an option, go for it. Absolutely. The more of your communication that you can shield from potentially prying eyes, the better. Do it. If you are willing and capable to deal with this and to work around some of the complexities of it, do it. Otherwise, find ways to communicate easily and securely. There are messengers that help, and for regular email communication, in most cases, you can just go plain text. And when you're trying to share something sensitive, find good ways to do so. I mean, there are multiple secure ways to share information, and 1Password is one of them. If you want to share something securely with a person, you can use our secure sharing tool that is part of 1Password and just send somebody something. This can be a password, this can be a piece of text, this can be a document that you put into 1Password that way, and just securely share it with somebody else. There are ways to do so, but yeah, secure email, if you can deal with this, do it.
Well, I learned something new. I'll have to go check out that feature. I didn't know that you could send things securely, but that's awesome. Thanks, Alex. Okay, a couple other questions. So from Mark, if 1Password is being used for a small company, about 6 people, he says, is there a plan or that you would recommend, or is there a plan that might be a suitable size?
We do have a plan for smaller organizations, but honestly, my recommendation here would be to get in touch with our sales team, and they will try to do the best they can for you.
Okay, I know that we have Alex Ash here as well. So Alex Ash, maybe you can put a link in the chat, if you don't mind, to 1password.com if there's a specific sales link. And I mean, we have found, we originally just had the marketing team on 1Password, and we brought in more and more of our team. I'm sure that, Alex, that's not the first time that you've heard of that. One department starts adopting it, and then you get wider and wider. And what's been really nice is that we've become very comfortable with using that, and it becomes a habit. And it's not really any extra time. It's just sort of part of your browser experience wherever you are. We all use Google Chrome, really easy. We have a very standardized experience. It's also really nice to be able to add contractors or, certain project managers for periods of time. And then you can pause their access if you need to. And that gives you greater control over your pricing as well. So you might find for a period of time someone needs access, and then you remove it, and that's complete flexible control for your billing.
Yep.
All right, there's a long question here from Brian, and I'm going to try and not read it all out loud. So LastPass shows icons with company logos, names easily identifiable. So I experienced that with 1Password too, by the way. It like automatically recognizes the brand logo, which is super fast for me. I appreciate that too. But he says passwords can be grouped into categories. So similarly, 1Password, we use vaults for that, things for the marketing team or contractors only or executive assistants, etc. And having keyword search is not really ideal all the time. Okay, so he says the question is, he's not currently happy with the current ESET dashboard. Does 1Password allow a dashboard view like LastPass? Most of the password managers I've reviewed don't seem to. So he's asking, what is the dashboard view like, maybe with certain features for search or easy identification?
So there are multiple ways you can present your data in 1Password. The basic view is kind of always the same. You have a 3-pane navigation view, but in terms of easily identifying information and easily organizing information, you have a lot of options. So Maddy, you already brought up vaulting. In LastPass, you put stuff into folders. The same holds true for most password managers. In 1Password, we call those things vaults. These form the basic building blocks of organization in a 1Password account. But beyond that, and this is kind of cool, you can tag items. You can use tags, and these tags exist across vaults. So if you want to organize your data, if you have, I don't know, 15 clients that you're working with, and for each of those clients you have one vault, and you want to just look at or update certain things about, I don't know, any item that contains data about their web presence, for example, you can have a tag that says website or web hosting. And you can then click on that tag in the sidebar, and it's going to list you all of those items across all of the vaults that you have. So you have multiple ways to organize this kind of information. And beyond that, 1Password has a lot of has various views for you to just keep track of what you have in your account, how your data is structured, how your data is organized, and more importantly, who has access to what, who used what the last time. And 1Password even gives you detailed activity logs of everything that is happening in the account. So there are various ways to do so. And I think once you start looking into 1Password and maybe get a demo from somebody in our sales team, you'll see that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, one of the things also that you might consider, we see this all the time, is like, onboarding new employees or even new contractors. Like there might be multiple vaults that span, different access points that people need. So you could use a tag onboarding to know that like just that selection of access keys is for pretty much anyone who's going to be onboarded, just like the basic fundamentals of access to key tools for your business. That can be a really helpful resource when they span multiple vaults or folders. So we find that, some staff is going to participate in a number of different vaults. And, for me as the main password manager, it's really helpful for me to see what are the actionable things that I need to do when I add someone in, who doesn't just need access to a single vault, but more passwords beyond that. Okay, so the next question is about data storage. So do you need to supply, your own database, or is all the data hosted, with 1Password, or is there even an option there if you prefer to?
Oh, so 1Password is a cloud-aided solution. This is the term that I tend to use when I explain it. There is a cloud component to 1Password, and that cloud component is responsible for data synchronization, managing your team members, performing administrative tasks, and it's also going to perform regular backups. 1Password uses AWS servers for all that we do in all regions that we are in. So Europe, Canada, US, we have different AWS data centers that we use for that. And these servers kind of are the source of truth. They keep everything for you. But at the same time, all 1Password applications keep a local database. So no matter if you're using Windows or Mac OS, you have 1Password, and you can even access that information offline. So you don't have to supply that, but you can rest assured that each of your devices that you have 1Password running on has a copy of your data, and you don't have to work. It's really part of our basic approach to data integrity, because we want to make sure that even in the highly unlikely event that our servers go down, you still have access to your data. And honestly, all good password managers do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, we use AWS as well, which is, really a gold standard. A couple other questions. So would you start with a password manager first if you're just endeavoring to improve your security measures, or would you look more to multi-factor authentication, two-step authentication, et cetera?
Actually, I'd start with a password manager because most of them, and 1Password obviously included, can even help you manage multi-factor authentication even better. So, I mean, multi-factor authentication always builds on a password process, on an authentication process that uses some sort of username and password. And then you add multi-factor authentication, and then you add other services like single sign-on maybe. But a password manager can, just by the simple reality that passwords still are and will be for a good amount of time, the basis of security for using web services, using web applications. So having a way to generate strong random passwords, unique passwords for every service you use, make sure that you're not reusing passwords anywhere, making sure that when there is a breach, when you have to change your password, or when you see, okay, I have this service, but it's an old weak password, that you can replace it easily, forms a really, really solid basis for you to build your own kind of approach to security. And then you can add other things. And I mean, 1Password, for example, gives you the ability to use 1Password itself as a 2FA code generator. So anywhere where you have these six number codes anywhere, you can use 1Password to generate those and store the your username, password, and the 2FA code in there, and it helps you fill those quickly. Now, some of you may think, wait, but that's not second factor anymore. And you'd be technically right, because a true second factor means that you have your username and password in one place, in your brain or in a password manager, and the second factor is a completely different device. If you have it on your phone and you have the password manager on your phone, that's not true two-factor anyway. But, and that's a crucial, extremely useful point. When your password manager supports storing 2FA codes, you may not have a true second factor in place, but the convenience of quickly signing into a site retains this time factor of it. So to give you a bit of a deeper scenario, you enter your username and password, or maybe somebody else has that, but they don't have your 2FA code. And using a password manager like 1Password to quickly fill that reduces the amount of time an attacker could potentially interfere with that process. So there is always a good balance to strike between raw security and convenience. And 1Password with its 2FA support gives you a lot of convenience.
That's really interesting. I hadn't considered using it in that way. How would you start getting people on board to use something like 1Password when you're really trying to build good habits with your team? You're trying to keep your contractors in line and secure. Are there a couple best practices or pitfalls to avoid?
There are so many cool ways to go about it. So one thing that I used to recommend a lot and still do when I'm part of the onboarding process, I mean, we've grown so much. We now have a dedicated onboarding team, which is just extremely good. But one of the neat things you can do is do a carrot and stick approach, meaning you invite everybody into the password manager. You give everybody the training they need, and then you put certain crucial information that people need on a regular basis, like an office Wi-Fi password. You put that into the password manager, and people have to use it. That's a simple, slightly mean, but very effective approach. Another way to do it, and this is one of my absolute favorite ones, is using the private life accounts that come with many password managers. And in 1Password, they're called 1Password families. Using those as kind of the starting point. You introduce a password manager into the organization and you try to communicate that, hey, this is something that we want you to use. This is a good tool. We're going to use it to improve our security stance. But it's also something that can be quite useful to you in your private life. So 1Password families accounts come with every 1Password business account. So every one of your team members can use it in their private lives. And again, we're a privacy-first company. 1Password families accounts are going to be created with a private life email address. The only connection between 1Password business and 1Password families exists on the billing side. So your private life stuff is always going to be in your absolute control. And this is such a good point to drive adoption, to help people understand the value of it, to show them, hey, you can use this at home. Install it on your machines, install it on your phone, use it to generate strong passwords for your Facebook account, for your email account, for your Netflix account. And then you can take it a step further. And this is this is something that I stole shamelessly from one of the clients that I onboarded years ago. I held a webinar training session, and there were about 100 people in the room. And one of the groups was in a big conference room, and they're like, hey, why should I use this at home? That's stupid. And somebody else, I just heard it over the microphone, somebody in the background shouted, you know how you told me you got annoyed because your kids kept asking you for your Netflix password? Now, if you have 1Password families, you put this Netflix password into a shared vault that your kids and your spouse can access, and you'll never hear those questions again. So introducing them to the ways they can help secure their families in their day-to-day life is going to be a big driving factor, and it's going to make it easier to showcase people the value of using this, and will just reduce their hesitation to introduce a security tool into their workflows.
Have you ever seen 1Password used for clients? Like I think, some of the folks who are here are attorneys, financial advisors, people who are dealing with health information, legal, financial information. Have you seen it used with clients? Because I know there's a huge trend right now for the practice management solutions, whether your practice is a law firm or a medical office. To have client portals, right? And that's you were talking earlier about secure email, as the person on the other end, using secure email, that's a big piece of that puzzle. Or else, is it really worthwhile or not if just half of the equation is secure? The client portals are very secure. Obviously, you have your own staff who gets access to it, and they could be using 1Password. But what about for the clients? Do you have any concern, if their access isn't secure, if that puts your business potentially at risk? Has that ever come up as a topic? I know it's a bit meta.
It's kind of meta, but it's also a very, very popular use case. So we have lots of law firms as customers, lots of doctors. For doctors, obviously, especially with things like HIPAA and regulations around that, it gets more complicated. But 1Password typically works for that. I mean, you should perform a proper check on this and the regulations you have to adhere to. But generally, 1Password is end-to-end encrypted, and it's provably end-to-end encrypted with keys that only you know. So that kind of reduces the worries there. And I mean, law firms, we have so many law firms who use 1Password and use the guest accounts in 1Password to exchange data, exchange documents securely with their clients. They invite their clients into 1Password as a guest, share with them one specific vault, and both can access that. Both can put data into that vault. So if you want to send a client a document to sign, that you put it into that shared vault, it appears in their 1Password, and they have the same kind of security in place, just like you are as the attorney, for example. You put that document in, they download it, they sign it, they upload it back into that vault, and you have a secure way of exchanging this kind of information with your clients.
Awesome. And I mean, we didn't even really touch on guest accounts much, but can we talk a little bit about, a guest user versus a regular user, and then also like a business account versus a Teams account?
So guest users are limited users in the sense that, unlike a regular team member in your account who has a private vault to store their work-life information and also access to any number of shared vaults, and then in the case of 1Password Business, also a family's account for private life use. A guest user is invited into the account. They have the same kind of secret key and account password. So they have the same degree of security, but they get access to only one vault a person in the account, a team member, specifies for that guest. Now, guests are in 1Password teams, which is kind of our slightly more limited plan. You have 5 free guest accounts, and in the 1Password business, you have 20 free accounts. Beyond that, they're going to be charged like regular team members. But you can obviously have as many as you like, as many as you need. And in the case of client relationships, I mean, this is just something you charge them with as part of your services. And in terms of the differences between teams and businesses, the big one that will probably affect people the most is certain security settings. The basic security design is the same. We don't differentiate between individual accounts, family accounts, team accounts, or business accounts. You get the same security. Just the depth of features that you have to customize your experience, to, for example, perform reporting tasks, get logs for everything you do for auditing purposes later on, the ability to create groups within your organization to represent maybe an accounting team, maybe somebody who performs marketing for you. In 1Password Business, you can create groups. In 1Password Teams, you cannot. And a big difference is the families accounts. So in 1Password Business, you get a free 1Password families account for every team member. In 1Password Teams, that is not the case. However, I'd be remiss not to say that we're presently running a promo that gives you 1Password Business for 25% off. And let me just move to that slide so you can actually see this. So if you want to just start trying 1Password and maybe make use of that promotion, go to 1password.com, resources, get 1Password, and you'll be able to have a look at that.
Awesome. Well, that's excellent timing, Alex. Thanks for sharing that. And I know that Alex Ash put that in the chat as well. I will share that, we are, as I mentioned, very happy 1Password users ourselves. I really didn't have a fantastic solution before we implemented 1Password here. As I mentioned in the chat, I think, everyone was using something different. It was based on your department or team. We see this sort of behavior with project management software, with, not so much case and practice management software, or CRMs, but, everyone has their own spreadsheets. Everyone's, keeping their own, goods in order in their own way. And what this does, I think, Alex, you saying the carrot and stick approach is really important. In order for you to access, these key parts of your role or doing business here in this organization where you're employed, you have to use this solution. And over time, it doesn't feel like a carrot and a stick. It just becomes habit and it's natural. And then people pass it down through the leaders and managers and team members where they are actually sort of monitoring each other's use. It often happens in my team where they'll say, oh, Maddy, this is still under your email. This is a really good example. And we have a marketing at Smith.ai email. There's a process of just migrating over. One's when I set it up 5 years ago and I was, a team of 1 to now the marketing department. So all the emails aren't stuck with me. To talk about front app for email management another time, which is awesome. So we've got, team inboxes. Well, this also prompts them to then come to me and say, hey, Maddy, not just the passwords, but the actual login and the alerts with these systems are stuck with you. Can we change this to the marketing team? Can we change this to the affiliate or sales team? And I love that behavior being prompted by the solution of 1Password. We see all these logins, and what else stems from those logins? Oftentimes the email you use to log in is also where the alerts and updates and bills are coming through, right? For other solutions that we use. We run Facebook ads. Is that stuck with me or does that go to the team? So they're really hyper aware of how the operation.
Yeah, and the cool thing, and it's really something that's starting to get into people's heads in this space. This kind of human-centric approach to security. when you start getting into this, you end up with people who are, like you said, much more aware of these things, much more aware of the small things that could turn into bigger things if left unattended. And on the other hand, and that's the other side of the coin, which I so love, you start learning, you start to learn to do things efficiently. And once security is not that big of a concern anymore, you free up mental energy to do other things. I think we had a raised hand from somebody.
Let's see.
Somebody called
Ken. I think he had said that he came in late and he wanted the recording. If anyone has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat or in Q&A. We just have a couple minutes left, so get them in now while you have access to Alex, or he's going to be hidden from you, tucked away in Germany. Just kidding. We have plenty of access, obviously, to the 1Password team, as you can see on your screen, that Alex has generously, there's the word, shared. There we go, a new Q&A. Ask and you shall receive. Okay, so got it. So Ken, thanks so much for putting your email in there. If you'd like to be contacted by the team, we'll make sure that you are, and there will be a recording of this program emailed to all of you who registered. It will also be up on our YouTube channel, and we will be happy to share access to these links in that email, so you have just a one-click approach to getting started, learning about the pricing plans, etc., that you can review with your team later if you'd like to. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Alex, thank you for being here. Alex Ash, thank you for being in the chat, helping me monitor questions. And hopefully we can do another one of these again soon. We would love to have you back, dig more into these topics, and just appreciate all your time with us today, Alex. Thank you so much for all the information.
Gladly.
All right, wonderful. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.